Hi, I'm Joseph Patrick, co-founder of Lamont Bros, and in today's video, we're going to talk about dry rot in structural components of your home, why it happens, and what to do about it. So we're here in Happy Valley, Oregon, in a very nice home that's situated on the top of an amazing view that was built in the early 2000s. And what I'm seeing today is a common problem with homes built from about 2000 to about 2012, where they built the home so tight. If there's ever a leak at some point, what happens is the water gets trapped in behind the moisture barrier and ends up rotting out significant structural components. So I'm currently kneeling on a flat deck, and there's a lot of these small flat decks in homes designed about this time, and they often fail. And normally what doesn't fail is the actual membrane itself. This is a Gecko deck product. It actually looks like it's in really good shape, and it has not been leaking. What leaked in this home is there was a parapet wall right here, and at some point there was a failure in the parapet wall that leaked water inside the parapet wall. And then once the water got in, they built the vapor barrier on the outside so tight that the water didn't have anywhere to drain out, and they couldn't dry out the wall. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we get a lot of rain a lot of the year. So most of the year, there's water hitting the exterior of our homes. If water intrudes and can't dry out, it ends up rotting the components, and you can see a pretty dramatic effect of that right here. So here is a main structural beam that holds up the second story and the roof and supports some of this deck system. So you can see it's a large beam, and the water funneled into this parapet wall, rotted out this wall. You can see that it's rotted out all the components from that door up to me, and it ended up rotting out a good half of this beam right here. Then after moisture gets in, what happens is bugs will often get in too, and bugs will just eat the wood, which just makes the rot worse. And it ends up spreading the moisture, because then now the bugs are attracted to the moisture and they spread the moisture, create passageways for more moisture to get farther in. And so this beam, it's rotted several feet back in the middle of the kitchen. Very difficult technical beam to replace in the home, because it's in the middle of the kitchen. It's holding up a second story and a tile roof, and it's not on the exterior, it's in between this deck system and the interior of the home. So I want to show you exactly why this initial parapet wall failure turned into a pretty catastrophic failure in this home. So the way we built homes in the early 2000s, we ended up having some type of exterior cladding or siding. In this case, down at this level of the home, it's this stone, and that was installed directly on a WRB, and that is put right on the sheathing. Now, the problem with this is we started focusing in the early 2000s on air sealing and really sealing up the home well from moisture, which in theory is an excellent idea. We don't want moisture in the home. But what we didn't do well in the early 2000s is understand and figure out, if we had a failure and moisture got in the home, what happens? And especially in such a wet environment as the Pacific Northwest, what happens is that moisture just rots out the home from the inside. And so moisture will get back here. All the seams and everything of this are taped up really, really well. And so the moisture is trapped in here and just rots the home out. Now, what we did to address that is building code actually changed and requires an 1/8-inch gap in between basically two layers of this paper, or there's certain ones that it just gets an 1/8-inch gap in one layer, or it requires an actual rain screen system with the vapor barrier behind it and then siding on those vertical strips. So there's actually a fairly large gap. So if water ever gets back there, it just drains out the bottom. So that is the way we've addressed this issue. There are still a lot of homes that are constructed this way that tend to have these kinds of issues. So how do you repair dry rot or water damage in structural components in your home? The first step is identify the extent of it and then get the dry rot material out. So all the rotten material has to get removed from the home because the organic organisms that are living there, continuing to rot out the wood, if they're left there, they're gonna continue to do that if they ever get any more moisture. And in Oregon, we've got a lot of moisture just in the air. So even if the leak stops, there's danger that if that's not dried out 100%, it could continue to rot some of that wood. It also attracts bugs, which then bring moisture themselves and continue to rot it out. So it's essential that you get all the rot out. So right here, this is below the area at the parapet wall that leaked down in the wall. And this is all the way down at the foundation level. Here, this component is gonna get removed. This component's gonna get removed. This rim joist has to get removed. All of this has to get torn out of the home and replaced with new structural members. Tearing out those structural components can get complex, particularly if they're critical structural components that a lot of other pieces are tied into, such as the beam right behind me. So when we realized there was this much rot in that beam, we had two options to look at. The first was replace the entire beam. And this would be very intrusive to the home. It's right in the middle of the kitchen. It's a long beam, it's a deep beam, and we would be looking at having to support the entire upper floor of the home and the tile roof as we pull this beam out and put a new beam in. So very intrusive, very expensive to replace the entire beam. We decided we did not want to do something that intrusive, but we've got to get all the rot out. And so what we determined made the most sense was to cut the beam back behind where the rot was, install a new beam, and hang the existing beam on the new beam. And so the new beam is gonna go perpendicular to the existing beam, and that beam is gonna get cut back, hung on the new beam, so that we don't have to end up getting into the entire kitchen and supporting as much as we do right now, just cutting the beam back, installing a new beam. So we save the homeowner quite a bit of money by taking that strategy instead of replacing the entire beam. Thanks for watching. Now you know why rot is so prevalent in homes, especially in the Pacific Northwest, built in the early 2000s. And you also know what it looks like for us to come in and fix them. Watch this next video to understand what we mean by a demo and discovery contract and why we use that tool to start the process.